Have you ever wondered why the more loyal you are, the less they seem to notice? Why your patience becomes their permission, and your forgiveness feels like fuel for their neglect? The truth is, people rarely respect what is always available. They don't honor the one who stays, explains, or endlessly hopes to be seen. But they do pause when you go quiet. They feel the shift when you vanish, not in anger, but in absolute clarity. Your silence unsettles more than your words ever could. Because when you walk away without drama, without blame, with a calm that feels final, the world is forced to reorganize itself in your absence. They may not quote Machiavelli, but they understand power, and nothing signals value like distance. What happens next is not about revenge. It is about return of your peace, your energy, your self-respect. Stay with me, and let's explore why walking away might be the most powerful move you ever make. 1. Abundance cheapens, scarcity crowns. The more you explain yourself, the more you dilute your value, the more you remain available, the more predictable you become, and predictability, in the minds of those who thrive on control, signals weakness. Machiavelli understood this dynamic clearly. In the courts of power, he observed that men are more moved by what they see than by what they touch. When you stay too long, they grow numb to your presence. But when you leave without drama, without noise, and with a stillness that unsettles, the silence echoes louder than your voice ever did. Absence carves itself into their memory like a brand. Because while sight fades, sensation lingers. Every toxic relationship follows the same experiment. They hurt you, observe your reaction, recalibrate, and hurt you again. If you continue responding with apologies, with explanations, with long-winded justifications, they interpret your tolerance as permission, so they raise the stakes. The jabs become sharper, the lies more subtle, the silence heavier. You think that more understanding will fix it. But each paragraph you offer becomes fuel for another round of manipulation. Then, one day, you stop. No announcement, no final message, no performance. You simply walk away. Not as revenge, but as self-respect made visible. The silence is not a threat, it is a verdict. And now the one who studied you begins to unravel. They scroll through old messages. They wonder if someone else replaced them. Someone who values you because you finally began valuing yourself. That haunting possibility gnaws at them, because in leaving, you proved something they hoped was never true, that you never needed them when disrespected. There are only two outcomes. The first is to chase closure. You pour out your feelings in carefully crafted words. They reply with a dismissive emoji, perhaps a one-word response. Your depth exposes their shallowness. The second is to retreat with dignity. You say nothing. You archive the conversation not as bitterness, but as a lesson. That chat bubble becomes a silent memorial. No arguments, no defense, no need to explain what they already knew and chose to ignore. And that silence becomes a sermon they will replay in their mind long after you are gone. Some messages never need to be repeated. Respect often arrives only when your presence is no longer available, and that is the moment they finally feel the weight of what they lost. 2. Walking away is not rage. It is sovereignty. To walk away is not an act of rage. It is an act of quiet negotiation with your own soul. You are not throwing a fit. You are establishing new boundaries. Each step into distance is not retreat. It is the redrawing of your internal map. A declaration that this space belongs to your dignity now, and that any future trespass will be met with silence, not justification. The world often confuses softness with virtue. But as Machiavelli warned, he who chooses mercy when the moment demands resolve will eventually turn that misplaced kindness into cruelty toward the ones who deserved better. When you allow disrespect, you commit a violence against your own worth, not the kind that leaves a bruise, but the kind that quietly corrodes your spirit from within. Forgiveness has its place, but its power lies in discretion. Forgive, Yes, not for their benefit, but for your peace. Yet let it remain private, not paraded. Public forgiveness can be mistaken for weakness. It becomes cheap currency, handed out too easily and too often, only to be defaulted on again. But private forgiveness is like gold kept safe under your floorboards, never at risk, never exploited. It pays for your freedom and fuels your forward movement. They may accuse you of being cold. Let them. A mountain does not apologize for being unmoved. They may say you are dramatic, too sensitive, too distant. But remember, those who thrived in the fog of your confusion will always resist the light of your clarity. They cannot manipulate what they can no longer access. Expect them to accuse you of ego, of arrogance, of emotional immaturity. They will call it games when you refuse to re-enter their arena. Do not respond. Starve their tactics with silence. For the moment you begin to explain your boundaries is the moment they begin to bend them. True strength does not shout. It simply closes the door and continues walking, not in anger, but in honor. You do not leave to teach them a lesson. You leave because you finally learned yours. 3. Silence is strength, not surrender. Silence is not a sign of weakness, nor is it a retreat into bitterness. It is strategy in its purest form. It creates space, not for resentment, but for reflection in that space. You begin to ask the questions that matter. Why did I tolerate what I did? Where in my foundations was I cracked enough to let their weight settle? When you answer honestly, you begin to fortify that fracture, pouring clarity and resolve into it like concrete. Then, when they return using the same tired tactics, they find the ground no longer soft, their tools no longer effective, and so begins the dance of breadcrumbs, a hey stranger message, a nostalgia-laced meme, a reminder of your birthday, but each gesture is coated with bait. Take even one step back, and the respect you earned vanishes. This is where patience becomes power. Let them starve. As Machiavelli reminds us, fortune favors the bold, and sometimes the boldest move is not to speak, not to chase, not to explain. Withdrawal is not avoidance. It is belief in your own worth without needing anyone else's confirmation. Your absence forces them to choose between self-reflection and self-destruction. Some grow, many spiral, if growth occurs. That is their harvest to tend, not your burden to oversee, if instead they lash out, twisting the story and painting you as the villain. Let them. Their speed in doing so reveals the truth. They never loved you. They simply loved controlling you. Control often dresses itself as affection, and the moment affection is denied, the mask falls. Some friendships and romances survive a clean break. The person recognizes what they lost, does the work, and returns with humility. If that happens, you welcome them, but only through gates now guarded with new codes. Others will flail, making promises they never planned to keep. Promises cost them nothing, but believing those promises always charges your peace. And like any wise steward of your resources, you must stop paying for illusions. You will hear the noise from the sidelines, friends who do not know the full story, colleagues who draw conclusions from fragments, relatives who mistake silence for guilt. Let them speak. Reputation built on rumors is like sand castles at tide. What you are building is not for their approval. You are laying stone, solid, sovereign ground. Over time, the seasons will erode the voices that do not matter. What remains will be those who truly understand your discipline, and within that discipline, you cultivate rituals, you invest in knowledge, sharpen your body, expand your spirit. All the energy once wasted trying to decode someone else's chaos now fuels your personal mastery. When they check your life months later, they will find no cryptic complaints, no public displays of pain. That stings more than anything you could have said, because it proves one truth they never wanted to accept. You were always capable of thriving without them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. When you walk away and remain silent, you are no longer debating your value, you are demonstrating it. And demonstrated value is undeniable." They will call it pride. Accept the label, because this is not arrogance. It is knowing the true worth of your soul and refusing to sell it at a discount. False humility is a trap. It attracts those who are hunting for someone easy to consume, and when those same critics fail to live by the advice they give, let their hypocrisy collapse under its own weight. As scarcity sets in, those who once tapped into you for emotional validation will seek a new source. They may find another person, but what they lost was not someone ordinary. They lost the source, the router, the signal. And when they realize that borrowed energy fades fast, they will return looking for your light. By then, you will be broadcasting on a private frequency, one they no longer know how to reach. Machiavelli warned that a ruler must choose allies carefully. Beware those who shower you with praise while secretly calculating their gain. In modern life, admiration can be camouflage for extraction. Learn to walk early, walk often, and walk away from spaces where the noise is louder than the results. Exit is not exile. You are not sentencing yourself to loneliness. You are elevating your standards. Sometimes that means walking alone, and solitude, when chosen with intention, refines you. Diamonds are not formed in crowds. They are forged in pressure and quiet. Let your shine come from within, and if you choose to return to certain circles, do so not as a lost wanderer, but as a sovereign entity. Terms must be renegotiated. Parity must replace pity, and if they fail again, you will leave again, but this time faster, because you have practiced the art of leaving well, and in that art lies your true freedom. 4. Detachment is a muscle. Detachment is not born from coldness, it is forged through experience. The first time you walk away, it feels like tearing ligaments, like ripping something essential from your own chest. But with each departure that protects your peace, your stride grows stronger. What once felt like agony becomes preparation, a stretch before the sprint. Over time, you no longer plan your exits. You simply recognize the signal, and instinct carries you away from what threatens your clarity. Distance becomes your default, not out of fear, but as an expression of wisdom. Do not confuse this with emotional numbness. You can love deeply and still choose to walk. You can carry beautiful memories and still refuse to relive the pain that created them. Love is a feeling, but boundaries are a decision. And when the two are at odds, it is the choice that must prevail. Because it is choices that shape your future, not the feelings that tried to keep you anchored in suffering. Machiavelli once noted that men rise from one ambition to the next, first to protect themselves, then to conquer. You reverse that path. You conquer by securing yourself so thoroughly that disrespect cannot thrive near you. You do not need revenge. You need self-respect carved into the foundation of your days. Your life becomes a fortress, not one built in bitterness, but in calm authority, not to lock the world out, but to ensure that only those worthy may enter. If this message strikes a chord in you, let that feeling become action. Cut distractions. Guard your mind like sacred ground. Sharpen your skills not to impress, but to elevate. Withdraw, not to disappear, but to re-emerge with power so quiet it commands attention. When you walk, let it be final, let it be clean. Do not slam doors. Do not broadcast your exit. Simply go with a silence that speaks more than any speech ever could. And remember, the world does not bend to your declarations. It bows to your standards. Standards that are not performed but lived. When you leave with composure, with no need for retaliation, with no backwards glance, you will notice something peculiar. The very people who ignored your presence now chase the echo of your absence. But by then, it will be too late. You are no longer waiting at the gate. You are already building your kingdom elsewhere. Keep walking. The road ahead holds far more than what you've left behind. 5. Let excellence guard your gate. Walk far enough from the ones who once belittled you and something shifts. At first, it is faint, a whisper rather than a roar. But slowly, the truth grows louder. The farther you move from those who failed to see your worth, the closer you come to the version of yourself you were always meant to become. It is a strange and humbling paradox. For years, you begged for flashlights from people who never wanted you to see. You twisted yourself into shapes to earn their approval, trading pieces of your soul for glances, favors, or shallow praise. Their validation was the cheapest currency in circulation, yet you mortgaged your entire self for it. But now, you have repossessed it. And in your silence, you have built a sanctuary, no longer a weapon. Your quiet has become a workshop. Every painful memory becomes a blueprint. Every question you once feared to ask becomes a tool for growth. Why did I settle for crumbs? Why did I dilute my worth just to be tolerated? You melt down these truths, forge them into steel, and sharpen that steel into boundaries no one will easily cross again. Machiavelli warned that unarmed prophets are always at risk. You listen, tit. Minastu. You want to boundaries are no longer ideas. They are armor, not made of hostility, but of maturity. You decline invitations without anger. You say no without needing to explain. And, in doing so, you preserve a kind of energy that once escaped you every day. You begin to feel lighter. The fatigue that once clung to your body like damp clothing begins to lift. Because it was never about being busy. It was about being disrespected. Every message you use to answer immediately, you now approach slowly, deliberately. You no longer lose sleep crafting comebacks in your mind. The courtrooms in your dreams are gone. In their place is what Seneca called epithemia, the cheerful steadiness of a soul that no longer negotiates its peace. In a world addicted to reaction, your stillness becomes rare, and rarity makes people uncomfortable. You will be accused of apathy. They will say you are arrogant, disconnected, too quiet. But deep down, those who make such claims wish they could do the same. Your refusal to perform becomes a mirror for their own chaos, and that mirror bruises their ego. The performer needs an audience, and when your seat is empty, the show begins to collapse. That is when the flip begins. They rebrand your peace as neglect, your restraint as weakness. Let them. Their confusion is not your responsibility. Instead, invest the time you use to waste decoding their mixed signals into building skills that sharpen both mind and body. Study without seeking applause. Train without telling anyone. Read, reflect, build. Progress becomes addictive because, unlike people, it responds to your effort. Machiavelli advised rulers to study war during times of peace, not because they love conflict, but because they understand that peace is not guaranteed. So you study languages, markets, martial arts, finance, anything that strengthens your inner state and prepares you for life's inevitable disruptions. Eventually, those who once had access to you will notice your transformation, but they will notice too late. They will return, cloaked in curiosity. Their messages will sound like compliments. Heard you launched something, saw your photos, looks like you have been growing. They are not offering connection. They are scavenging, looking for proof that you still belong to them, that you're still reachable. Offer none. You owe no one an update. Your excellence is now your boundary. A wall they can see but no longer touch. Be mindful, though new admirers will appear. some in polished armor, speaking the language of admiration, but as Machiavelli warned, not all who smile are allies. Some are mercenaries in disguise. Their flattery outpaces their contribution. They praise quickly, but commit slowly. Learn to test people not with suspicion, but with silence. Offer a sliver of access and watch what they do with it. True allies contribute before they compliment. They serve before they speak. Maintain courtesy. But remember that you are no longer a charity. You are a sovereign, and sovereignty requires ritual. Rise each morning like a monarch surveying your own mind. Audit your emotions. Identify what is unresolved and tend to it with care. Turn resentment into fuel, not fire. Strengthen the body so it remembers how power is born under pressure. Study financial discipline because autonomy depends on resources. And each evening, record your small victories because those who document their days begin to shape their decades with intention. Meanwhile, those you left behind will speak. Someone will call you heartless. Another will say you're hiding pain. Let them knit their fictions. The lion does not write press releases. Your truth belongs only to you. They may see you through a blurred lens. But clarity is not theirs to hold. Yet even as you elevate, guard yourself from arrogance. Solitude, when not balanced with humility, can harden into self-righteousness. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to enter the minds of others and see the same weaknesses. Even the ones who hurt you are merely children in elaborate disguises. Recognize that not to excuse them, but to remain human. Forgive if it brings you peace, but never confuse forgiveness with permission. Charity and boundaries can coexist. You can bless someone from a distance and still lock the gate. And when they try to return, observe the pattern. First comes nostalgia, wrapped in old jokes or playlists or memories. Then guilt. They say real friends don't disappear. When that fails, they rage. So now you think you're better than us. These phases all aim for the same thing, your empathy. Protect it. Use perception to see clearly, purpose to stay aligned, and premeditation to anticipate mischief before it arrives. When word eventually reaches you that someone has called you ruthless, let that word land without resistance. Because ruthlessness, in its truest form, is simply refusing to be cruel to yourself again. Your circle may shrink, but it will deepen. Dialogue becomes richer. Growth becomes mutual. You attract thinkers instead of takers. Mentors appear because now you stand where mentors go, far from complaint, close to purpose, and one day you catch a glimpse of yourself in a window, in a mirror, and you see it. Your posture has changed, the way you enter a room, the calm behind your eyes. That is what happens when your life is no longer up for auction. That is what happens when excellence becomes your wall. You stop performing, you start radiating, and those who once ignored you begin to watch in silence, unsure whether to applaud or retreat. Let them wrestle with that. You're already gone, already building what they never believed you could. And that is the reward for walking away with grace and never needing to explain. 6. Lead quietly, rise permanently. You are no longer available at a discount. From now on, every offer must honor your worth or receive your silence. If something asks you to dim your light, to rewrite your values just to belong, it is not an opportunity, it is a hidden tax. Decline it. Not with anger, but with stillness. Not every door is worth opening. Not every invitation is worthy of response. Occasionally, loneliness may whisper in the quiet. It will show up during long nights, on old anniversaries, in moments of sudden stillness. But solitude is not punishment. It is a sacred space where your highest self begins to unfold. Real allies will arrive. They will not demand proof or presence. They will meet you without cost. Until then, choose the sanctuary of peace over the illusion of belonging. when the urge to return stirs. Breathe and ask yourself one honest question. Will this restore something real or simply repeat something broken? Most answers whisper the same word: relive. And healing does not hide in repetition, so walk forward far enough, and you arrive at a place where you can forgive without returning from that height. Resentment becomes dead weight. You release it, not as a favor to the past, but as fuel for the future. You will begin to feel the shift. Your stride becomes steady, your choices sharper, projects grow, finances rise. Strangers begin to notice a calm intensity behind your gaze. What they see is the residue of silent discipline, and what they call luck is simply your new location. You have relocated from chaos to clarity. You no longer beg for the things that belong to you. You embody them. Machiavelli admired this kind of presence, alert but unshakable, soft-spoken but immovable, and then, as expected, the past may knock. A message might appear. I miss how you understood me. But your pulse no longer jumps, because they miss the version of you that abandoned yourself for their comfort. That version no longer lives here. You have nothing to reopen. Some stories end not with a climax, but with a quiet, unanswered notification. Let others talk. Let them invent their versions of your silence. What matters is not their echo, but your clarity. You now rise early not to prove anything, but because dawn whispers where noise cannot. You no longer rehearse arguments in your head. You prepare your spirit. And with each passing day, you shed the need to explain. You no longer broadcast your worth. You live it. Influence does not come from chasing attention. It grows from walking in alignment, and those who sense it will find you, not because you called, but because your presence moved without sound. Lead quietly. Rise slowly. Rise permanently. When your worth is questioned, let your silence speak louder than any defense. You don't owe speeches to those who abandoned their loyalty. You don't owe access to those who overlooked your value. Close the gate gently, not in anger, but in clarity. And when they finally feel the absence they once ignored, they will also face the reflection of their own character. By that time, you'll be far ahead, surrounded by those who recognized your strength without needing to see you leave. Respect begins not when you demand it, but when you walk away and never look back. If this message found you at the right moment, take a breath, subscribe if it resonates, and share it forward. Comment below with "Walk in Power" to seal your commitment. And remember, your future respects your boundaries more than your past ever did. The next chapter is waiting. Keep walking.